Hello book friends. My name is Majid. We are starting a new series of books Consciousness in the Cell. Follow us and don't forget to like and subscribe.
According to a protein's type and where it is to wind up. The Golgi body purifies these proteins and separates and packages them, according to their type and destination. It also produces the packages according to the type of cell where the proteins are destined to go. In order for the biochemical activity of the thousands of proteins synthesized in the not to become mixed up, however, these processes must be carried out with great sensitivity, and each protein must be directed towards its destination. The tiny organelle known as the Golgi body organizes this traffic. It displays great awareness in every process it carries out. It recognizes the proteins that come to it, separates them, determines their needs, carries out its production according to their needs, identifies their function, packages them, and organizes this traffic flow without any confusion. The one who inspired the cell and the organelles within it, with the ability to decide and apply the knowledge, is the Lord of the worlds, that is, God. Those who find themselves awestruck in the face of these cellular miracles and who witness God's superior knowledge can only be shocked at the evolutionists' claims that all this came to be as a result of coincidence. He created the heavens and the earth with truth and formed you, giving you the best of forms. And He is your final destination. Quran 64-3. The liver as a giant laboratory. No one could claim that a fully equipped laboratory, fitted out with the latest technology, could come about by itself, by chance. But evolutionists claim that the liver's unparalleled laboratory complex arose by itself, advocating this claim with no proof at all. This is because Darwinism is a superstitious belief system, a spell that blinds one's mind. 500 separate processes take place in just one cell of the liver. Most of these, which take place faultlessly in milliseconds, that is, thousandths of a second, still have not been reproduced under laboratory conditions. Liver cells convert the food we eat into stored energy, that is glycogen, which the liver stores and converts to glucose as needed by the body to satisfy its energy needs. In short, even while we eat all manner of food we like, the liver uses, converts or stores this food's energy according to our body's needs. And from the first human until today, trillions of liver cells have acted with exactly the same consciousness and knowledge, with no confusion. Cells that commit suicide to keep the body from harm. Many cells produce a series of proteins in order to destroy themselves when they become superfluous, defective or diseased. However, so long as a cell is beneficial to the body, these proteins are obstructed from doing their deadly duty. If the cell becomes diseased, turns renegade or cancerous, or begins to threaten the health of the organism, the fatal proteins are released and activated to kill off the offending cell. The cell's ability to make the right decision at the right time and place is very important. In the event that it can't, that is, when the killer proteins are activated in a healthy cell, then healthy tissue will die, and the result will be death of the whole organism. But if the harmful or diseased cells are allowed to survive, then the organism may die too. A cell that has decided to commit suicide and activated its killer protein first shrinks and pulls away from its neighbors. Soon blebs appear on its surface, and it appears to boil. Then its nucleus and finally, the cell itself break apart. Other surrounding cells immediately ingest its remaining fragments. A more interesting event is that the other living cells do not clean up all the dead ones. Some are deliberately left alone, because they have not yet completed their duties. For example, tissues such as the lens of the eye, the surface of the skin, and the nails are all composed of dead cells. But because the body has need of them, they are not destroyed. The important fact that trillions of cells in the body all make decisions about which dead cells to destroy and which to leave alone is a point worth reflecting on. What gives the cell consciousness to make and apply such vital decisions? Who taught the cell to recognize conditions that bring harm to the larger organism it finds itself in? And who inspires this microscopic life form to ward off harm? As has been explained here, all cells have been programmed in the best fashion to let organisms continue their existence. But in that case, Who is the master of that program? Evolutionists have become blind enough to believe that the master of this extraordinary program is unconscious coincidence. But God's unique creation and infinite knowledge are clearly manifested in every detail of a living organism. Bacteria destroying machines in the liver, bacteria that we cannot see enter our bodies through the food we eat, via the air we breathe, or by any number of other ways. Harmful bacteria must be neutralized before they upset the workings of the body. For this reason, certain cells in the body, whose sole duty is defense, have been endowed with perfect memory. However, as an example of the body's faultless design, many additional defense measures have been set up. One line of defense is provided by certain cells found in the liver, a strategic point in the circulatory system. In less than 0.01 of a second, the so-called Kupffer cells digest and neutralize any harmful bacteria that pass through the bloodstream from the small intestine to the liver. Out of all of the countless bacteria that enter the body, how can these unthinking cells distinguish those that can cause harm from those that are beneficial? How can these cells destroy some bacteria, but leave others untouched, without knowing the bacteria's characteristics or what they will do, once inside the body? At this point, another important fact requires consideration, that Kupffer cells are found in the liver. But why the liver, and not any other organ? Here is still another proof of our body's perfect creation. Had these cells been placed in any other organ in the body except the liver, the cleansing of the blood from bacteria wouldn't have been as effective. Because after being cleansed in the liver, the blood then enters the general circulatory system, to circulate throughout the entire body. And so, fewer than 1 in 100 bacteria ever succeed in reaching the general circulation. What sort of blind coincidence could have ensured the placement of Kupffer cells in the liver, out of all the organs in the body? The cells themselves can't determine the most appropriate place for them to go, much less set about going there. The body is composed of approximately 100 trillion cells, and it's not possible for any one of them to possess consciousness enough to determine a spot for itself and travel to settle there. Such a faultless plan requires the existence of a superior mind, one that belongs to the one who knows every inch of our body and who created us from nothing in the most appropriate of designs, that is, God. Consciousness in the cell. You are never in control of your breath, because some of your cells control it for you. If regulation of our breathing were left up to us, we would probably die of asphyxiation from forgetting to breathe, falling asleep, or being preoccupied with other activities. For every human being, this crucial process is regulated by the respiratory center, which is the size of a lentil bean and is located in the brainstem, an extension of the brain. It is made up of 3 different groups of neurons. The first group determines the basic rhythm of breathing and gives the lungs and the chest the signal to inhale air. In this way, we breathe in the air we need. The second group of cells determines the speed and pattern of our breathing. When this second group comes into play, however, the cells signal to the first group to halt their activity. This controls the air capacity of our lungs, and our breathing speeds up. The third group, on the other hand, is not normally active. They come into play when a high rate of breathing is needed, and they ensure that the abdominal muscles participate by sending them signals. Is all of this enough to keep us alive? No. Respiration is also controlled chemically. Breathing's aim is to maintain the correct balance of oxygen and carbon dioxide in our blood. Any change in this balance activates a group of cells in the respiratory center, bringing the levels back to normal with very sensitive adjustments. But the amount of oxygen in the blood has no direct effect on the respiratory center. In that case, how does the respiratory center become aware of the change in oxygen level in the blood? Consciousness in the cell 44. At this point, another group of cells comes into action, displaying a miraculous consciousness. In large veins outside of the brain, such as the jugular, highly sensitive receptors send signals to the respiratory center when the blood oxygen level falls below a certain level. In this way, respiration is regulated with very finely tuned adjustments. How can a group of cells know how much oxygen is needed for the body to stay alive? How can these cells have used such a mechanism? which has been in place from the first human until now, when only in the last 20 years has science discovered this mechanism. Moreover, this mechanism is so sensitive that for the entire duration of our lives, no mistake is ever made when sitting, running or sleeping. It ensures that at every second, vital oxygen is carried to the 100 trillion other cells in our body, and that harmful waste products like carbon dioxide and hydrogen ions are speedily removed. Even though they know the truth, some scientists, fanatically committed to the theory of evolution because of their obsession with materialism, claim that this perfection came about as a result of blind coincidence. Whereas the creator of this perfect order is clearly the possessor of infinite intelligence, that is, God. Your cells can do what you cannot pretend that various samples of powdered metal are placed before you, and you are asked to determine what each metal is. Would your analysis be correct? If you haven't been educated in the field of metallurgy, this would be impossible for you. But this analysis, which a conscious being like you cannot perform, is done quite easily by the approximately 100 trillion cells in your body, and without any thinking, or calculations, or difficulty. Moreover, not only the cells in your body have this ability, but so do the untold trillions of cells in the bodies of the billions who have ever lived on Earth. Your cells can easily recognize iron, which your body needs, and can absorb it for use. With the same ease, cells can recognize phosphorus, nitrogen, oxygen, sodium, potassium and other substances and can gather them together to use, or else store the excess. They can even send out any extra material that isn't needed. Consider that the cell is a structure made up of proteins, molecules, and atoms and is about 1/1000th of a millimeter in size. It has no hands or arms, no eyes, ears or brain. Unlike you, it has no consciousness. If so, how can it recognize these substances? This ability is brought about by God's inspiration to each cell. It is the possessor of knowledge and power who confers this ability requiring clear insight and consciousness, upon blind and unconscious atoms. Molecules that try to pass through the gates of the cell, the protein that controls entry and exit from the cell inside of the cell. Most people cannot identify minerals placed in front of them. However, cells in our body can distinguish between minerals, oxygen, sodium and potassium, and isolate the elements it wants and take them in. Your life continues because of the conscious division of labor of your cells. Vitamin B12 is very important for the continuation of life because it is used in the production of blood. Vitamin B12 deficiency leads to anemia, which can lead to death. However, the body cannot use this vitamin on its own. This is why stomach mucus secretes a substance that allows vitamin B12 to be absorbed and play its vital role in blood production. In a special place in the small intestine, there are cells whose sole duty is to absorb vitamin B12. Now, blood production, after a series of complicated processes, takes place mainly in the bone marrow. But most bone marrow is located far away from the stomach. How can the use of a vitamin needed by the bone marrow depend on a substance made by stomach cells? And how is it that a few cells, at a specific site in the small intestine, take upon themselves the duty of absorbing this vitamin? For all of this to occur, cells in both the stomach and the small intestine must possess knowledge, being aware and in control of the details of blood production, a process that takes place a very far distance away. In addition, they must realize how important this production is for the body. In short, in the deepest and darkest of places in your body, systems and amazingly conscious processes take place between cells, leaving scientists dumbfounded upon learning about them. Without a doubt, these cells cannot will such clear consciousness and faultless processes to take place. It is God, the Lord of the heavens and the earth, who created the vitamin B12 and programmed cells with the knowledge to be able to use it. For events to take place in your cells, knowledge is required. Digested food that has come from the stomach to the small intestine contains very strong acids, posing a serious danger to the duodenum, because unlike the stomach, the duodenum has no special lining to protect it from acid. So how is it that the duodenum escapes damage from the acids in digested food? Determining the answer requires us to examine the events that take place during digestion, and an awareness of the amazing processes that occur in our bodies. When the level of acid reaching the duodenum from the stomach becomes dangerously high, the walls of the duodenum release a hormone called secretin, which protects the duodenum and is found in the walls of the small intestine in an inactive form, called prosecretin. On contact with acid, prosecretin is converted into secretin. Released into the bloodstream, secretin travels to the pancreas where it stimulates the release of enzymes. The pancreas, on learning by the presence of secretin that it is in trouble, sends to the duodenum bicarbonate ions that neutralize the acid and thereby protect the duodenum. How did these processes, so vital to human life, about? Located in the pancreas is knowledge of the substance needed by the duodenum cells, and the formula to activate them. The way the pancreas understands the message sent by the duodenum, and its subsequent release of bicarbonate ions are all miraculous. Here, in talking about the intestinal cells, we use terms like knowledge and understanding to emphasize the events that take place in the human body. However, as every conscious person can appreciate, it is impossible for a cell to think, to possess the will to make decisions, or to be aware of what's transpiring with other organs and produce enzymes and hormones in response. The unique possessor of knowledge, who created these cells together with these capabilities, is God. With these features that He has created in our own bodies, He demonstrates to us His infinite power. When you eat sugar, a giant factory goes to work in your body. If you happen to eat food that contains more sugar than you need, what prevents a rise of sugar in your blood? 1. First of all, cells in your pancreas locate and isolate the sugar molecules, out of hundreds of other molecules in the blood. In addition, it decides whether the number of these molecules is too great or too small. That is, they are effectively counted. Tiny cells that you can't even see with your naked eye, that have no eyes, brains or hands, can calculate the number of sugar molecules in the blood plasma. This is certainly something worth thinking about. 2. If these pancreas cells determine that the blood contains too many sugar molecules, they decide to store this extra sugar. They cannot carry out this storage process themselves, however, stimulate other cells located very far away to do this for them. 3. But these distant cells will not store sugar unless they receive an order to do so. So the pancreatic cells release a hormone that tells these distant cells to start storing sugar. The formula for this hormone, which we call insulin, is encoded in the DNA of the pancreas cells since they were first formed. 4. Next, special enzymes, or worker proteins found in the pancreatic cells read this formula, then begin producing insulin according to its directions. To effect this synthesis, hundreds of different enzymes go at work on different tasks. 5. The synthesized insulin is then dispatched to the target cells, through the blood, which is the most reliable and speedy manner. 6. Other cells that read the insulin's order to store sugar obey this command without fail. Gateways open up, allowing the sugar molecules to pass through into the cells. When insulin binds to a receptor in the cell membrane, 1. Special proteins in the cell, 2. Go into action. This is a signal to glucose transporters. In addition, there are glucose sacs in the inner part of the cell, 3. Some are close to the cell membrane, 4. On receiving the signal, these sacs move towards the cell membrane and fuse with it, 5. Exposing the glucose transporters, 6. With the increase in the number of transport proteins that take glucose into the cell, the glucose level in the blood drops and less insulin is produced. A short while later, a portion of the cell membrane, together with the transport proteins, curls around towards the inside of the cell, 7. Forming a vesicle, 8. Moving toward the middle of the cell, it combines with the endosome, 9. Here, once new sacs are formed, it awaits a new signal, 10, and the process continues. 7. These gateways don't open up indiscriminately, however. Out of the hundreds of different molecules in the blood, storage cells isolate, capture, and take in only sugar molecules. 8. Under no circumstances do the cells disobey the orders that reach them. They don't misread the order, or try to capture other molecules, or try to store more sugar than they need to. They work with great discipline. When you drink tea that has too much sugar in it, this extraordinary system goes into action and stores the excess. If this system were not working, your blood sugar level would rise to the point that you would slip into a coma and die. This is such a perfect system that if need arises, it works in exactly the opposite direction. If your blood sugar level falls below normal, the pancreas produces a completely different hormone called glucagon, which sends a release sugar into the blood command to those same cells that had stored it previously, and these cells obey.
Thank you for following. Wait for us in a new part. Bye.